Hey, thank you for coming. We talk about building your own bog in your front yard. This is our bog. Has anybody ever hiked over at in Woodbury or Whittemore Sanctuary?
Whitmore?
Yeah, that's it. This is not really our bog, but it's pretty close to where we did. Barb and I have been involved with botany and giving talks on plants and animals and historical subjects about 14 years. We were members of the Wallingford Garden Club for about 10 years. And, I was the only guy in the club. There were 60 women, and they considered me to be an invasive species. Right? Yeah. I said, no, I'm a rare orchid. I'm a bog orchid. So that was a while ago, and we've kind of progressed a little bit with some of our studies. We like weird stuff. We like to look at things which no one has ever seen before. And bogs. There's a nice bog down the street not far from here. It's a type of a wetland that's defined by having peat in the bog itself. It's characterized by wet, spongy soil. It's well drained. The sphagnum moss grows in it. The true bog doesn't have any source of water inlet except for rain and perhaps the springs surrounding it. The one at Whittemore at Flanders is actually a fen because there is a brook that comes through it, but it has enough peat in it to be considered almost a bog and has the same type of flowers that you'll see in a true bog. It lacks because of the sphagnum moss and so on. It lacks nitrogen in the whatever soil it has there. It has very few minerals. It's very acidic. The sphagnum moss it causes the acid to increase, actually the acidity to increase, or pH to go down, and it's the home of many carnivorous plants and orchids. I have macular degeneration, so it's kind of hard for me to see a little bit.
I'll do that.
But these are the hungry carnivorous plants that you'll find growing in the bogs in the area. Just talk to Rich, and he loves the carnivorous pitcher plants you've seen up in Massachusetts. But they are hungry, but they're not hungry in a way that the animals are carnivorous, because the animals will eat the whole body of their prey. These plants just want to get at the nitrogen and phosphates and other minerals because they're not available in the bog itself. This is the Black Spruce Bog in Mohawk Mountain. Has anyone ever been there? Hiked up there?
Yes.
You went to the bog? Yeah, it's just a little thing there, but make sure you stay on the trail.
Yes.
The bogs originally formed after the glaciers came through. The glaciers scoured the land, took away all of the anything that was living there, and made holes and deep depressions in the earth down to the bedrock. And basically, what happens is that once the glacier starts retreating, it melts, and the water fills in these depressions. And the depressions don't have any water inlet or water outlet, and it just filled up there. And again, it stays filled with water from rain and also from any springs in the area. So as it gets older, this is about 10,000 years ago, as it gets older, some of that sphagnum moss that grows in there starts sinking down on the bottom, and it forms a very fine sediment called peat. We've used peat moss for our planting in the area, and in Europe and Ireland, they're cutting back on the amount of peat that's being sold because they're afraid that they're kind of destroying the peat bogs up there, so it's getting harder to find. So just a few thousand years ago, there's so much sphagnum moss that keeps growing and dying and building up on the top, the layer of the water, and then it falls down on the bottom. Then you get a deposit of peat on the bottom of the bog, and some of the peat is floating on the top, so there's only water level in between, and eventually that hole there will cover over, and then you'll find out that you just have peat in there. It's wet, soggy, and then it's able to allow different hardwood trees to grow in there, and softwoods such as the black spruce and so on. And the one at the Mohawk Mountain is almost a completed bog. I mean, there's still areas, there's a little bit of water, but it's almost completed. Another 200,000 years, it'll become like a meadow up there. So sphagnum moss, I might have a sample. Unfortunately, the people on Zoom are not going to be able to see it, but this is sphagnum moss from our garden. And you can squeeze it if you want, whatever you want. But if you ever see sphagnum moss and you're hiking, you grab a handful of it and you can squish it, and there'll be a lot of water coming out of there. And the way the cells were developed, the sphagnum keeps the water in the live cells and also in the dry cells, and it can hold up to 10 to 25% of its dry weight. It would be water. So there's a lot of water in there, and it's great for bogs. For do-it-yourself bog, maybe not so good because I have to keep filling up my bog with a gallon of water every day because it just sucks it up and then it gets evaporated. In World War One, the Army nurses ran out of bandages in Europe, and they did a study and they were forced to use sphagnum moss to cover the wounds. And it was antiseptic enough, and it was a good healing, and it had a low pH, and not much stuff likes to grow in sphagnum moss. So they were using it for bandages, and they had to make do with whatever they had. Okay, so this is the beginning of my do-it-yourself bog. This is the year 2019. My bog is now 6 years old. It's no longer a baby bog. It's an adolescent teenage, almost an adolescent teenage bog. We start out with the polypropylene liner, hard plastic. I got this in one of the box hardware stores, but you can get them at the Tractor Supply, different sizes. This one is only 27 inches wide, 7 inches deep, and it has about 4 square feet. So everything you're going to see today was grown in that bog. What we do, I put a layer of lava rock down, horticultural lava rock on the bottom of it. We wash the rock first because they put dye in it and stuff. And then I put in a flower pot, the one that has 6 or 7 holes in it, because we want the water to go through there and to circulate into the bog. Then I make a mixture of the soil, and I take about 50% of playground sand, which was horticultural type sand, and I take peat moss that I was able to get. That's about 40%, and then some sphagnum peat moss, the dried sphagnum moss, and they sell that in again the garden stores. And I mixed that with some water. I use bottled water here, and it takes a couple days for the material to absorb the water because it's so dry. And then I will apply that around that flower pot and build up the soil up until the top layer. Now, previous to that, I had to dig a hole for this bog container. It has to be as straight, even as you can make it, because you don't want the water to be flowing downhill to one corner of the bog, and it'll pool in there, which would be good for some of the plants. So then I made it level, and I buried the liner up to the rim on that container. And now that's ready to plant now. And from this point onward, I only use distilled water or water from a dehumidifier. Now, this is a bog. It is a mini bog. Whatever goes in stays in there or evaporates. So if you have water that has minerals in it, like if you have hard water where you live, you put that in there, the water evaporates, and all the calcium is going to precipitate out, and it's going to accumulate into that soil. And eventually it clogs up all of the water, the water flow in there, and it's not good for the plants. And even like the Poland Springs water you buy, it's mineral. There's minerals in there, and after I'm going now 6 years, putting it in, and it's going to get concentrated. So I only use distilled water or rainwater. I won't use water from the rain gardens where the water flows off your roof, because the roof has minerals in it, and that's going to be dissolved, and it's going to come down. It's the rain barrel, and we put it in here, it's going to concentrate. So when I started, the water was 90 or 89 cents a gallon. Now it's between $1.40 and $2 a gallon. It's expensive, really went up high. And you need to put this in an area, very important, at least 5 to 6 hours with full sunlight each day. I get about 6. In the fall, it's less, but it's doing pretty well there. The more sunlight you have, the better. So I have the instructions how to make one. It's from the Brooklyn Botanical Garden, and there are instructions on the table if anybody wants to log on to their site, and they're very clear and very easy to do. Okay. Now this is the bog. My first year, 2019. I bought some well-established pitcher plants from Earth Tones down in Woodbury. I like to get stuff from them because they grow it locally, and they grow from seed. They don't collect. And so it's already been established in this area, and it's used to our cold and our hot temperatures. Whereas if you get it from down south, there's certain things down south, but bring it up here, they're probably likely going to die. So I put the pitcher plants in. There's some cranberries in there, and there's some other things, but you'll see. And you see the water level in there? Whatever the water level is in that pot, that's the water level that's in the rest of the bog. So if the water level in the pot is way down the bottom, you know the rest of the bog is going to be down in the bottom too. So you need to fill that up. And I always fill it up from the pot there. And if the pot's overflowing, that's okay, because these plants are adapted to be growing in standing water for a certain period.
Okay, so this is, you can pass that around.
Okay. I have a northern pitcher plant. I picked it up at the flower show in Hartford in February. I think I paid $12 for it. And it was this tiny little thing. It's hard to see, but after the meeting, we'll hold it up on the side there. But the pitcher is really starting to grow. You can see one corner there. It's got the hairs on it and all.
So yeah, this is a carnivorous pitcher plant. So these plants attract insects. You see these pollinator lines here. So the insects will get trapped in the pitcher plant, and the enzymes in the pitcher plant will kill the insect and then digest the insect and then use that for nutrients for the plants in the bog. So this is the first year of that pitcher plant. And you can see these little downward hairs there. So when the little bug, that little ant, gets trapped in the water there, that's in the pitcher plant, he's trapped. He's going to be lunch. And so this is what they're going to feed on. Actually, there's 2 ants in there. I didn't see that one. Okay. And here you can see there's some nice big fat June bugs there. And that pitcher, see, it fills with the water. So then the insects are attracted to the scent of that plant, and also those pollinator, the veins that are in the plant, and they will become more pronounced as the plant gets a little bit more established. So here's a young one. See this one here. It's just going to open up. And there's the older one there.
This was your first year?
This is all the first year.
It's a modified leaf. You get a blade, like a knife, come up, and then it's flat. Then eventually it opens up like that.
And then it'll lay down. These are little sedges. These little white balls. These little furry things. See, notice the color of the pitcher plant now. This is May 2020. And it's really turning that beautiful red. And right here is the bud, the flower bud right there on that pitcher plant. So that was in 2020. Now here you can see the stem is getting taller and the bud is getting fuller. And the plant itself is getting bigger too. And then all those grasses are sedge grasses kind of surrounding it. And you can see a little sphagnum moss here. And that's our first flower in 2020. And it's really quite a beautiful flower. It's that deep red, the deep maroon color, and it's really a photogenic flower. And that's at 10 months. But you can see here's all that sphagnum moss. Here's the arrowhead flower. It has little white flowers, and then all the sedge grasses.
Keep track of the bog itself. You could see the rim, and you could see the little bits of sphagnum moss. So that's a year old.
Okay.
So we're going to go 5 more years. So watch the progression. Keep that in your mind.
It's going to change pretty dramatically. And here's a close-up of the beautiful flower. And what's nice about this mini bog in our front yard is that, when you're in a bog, sometimes these flowers, yeah, you can see them, but you're a little bit of a distance away from them. So this is like we can get down, and take really cool pictures. And we're only taking pictures with our point and shoot little camera. And sometimes the cell phones take great pictures now. So here's different angles. This is the back of it. This is looking up. These are the petals here. These are the sepals around. This is the style right here. And it will lose its petals. So this is the sepals now. The petals fall off. Here's the style. Here's the anthers, and this is where the pollen is up here. And here's a little creature up there. And this is just to kind of give you show you the diagram of the flower. So the petals will fall off. The ovaries here. This is the pollen down here. That's the male part, the anthers. These are little baby pitcher plants that we took at Earth Tones. Took a picture. And here's some cool bugs that love the pitcher plants. It will attract many of your native bees and other native flies and so forth.
Barb won't talk about bugs. He leaves it to me.
He gets all the
we've got many different types of bugs in there. She mentioned the ants. Now the ants will go in there and they try to get at some of these bugs that are trapped in there and bring them back to their nest because they'll feed on those. So the ants are kind of sneaky. They'll do that, but every once in a while one will fall in there. And the ants will probably pollinate that plant too. So there's a little bit of symbiosis going on here, where the plant allows the ant to come in, not going to dissolve it unless it falls in, and meanwhile it gets pollinated. There are certain types of mosquitoes that are specific for pitcher plants. They won't grow anywhere else. The larvae. People ask me, "What do I get mosquitoes from my bog?" And I don't, because the bog eventually will fill in with sphagnum moss, as you will see. So, and then I keep putting water in and it stirs it up so much that there is not a problem with mosquitoes. Now, these are the water bears, the tardigrades that grow and live in bogs and swamps and so on. I have yet to see one in mine. I have to look with the stereoscope every once in a while, but it might be too small. They call them water bears and or water piglets and so on. And the neat thing about these is that these things can dry out for 30 years and then come back to life. So, what's the definition of life? It's not metabolizing, not doing anything, but you add water to it and you get these little creatures coming back. Some of my favorite flowers were the sundews. These are also carnivorous. This was taken at Whittemore. And if anybody's hiked there recently, the beavers really raised their dam up. And all the areas where the logs were first exposed back in 2020 are now covered with water. So all of these little plants have disappeared on those logs. They're still in there, but it's hard to get to them. It's hard to find them. And there's 2 types of sundews that are shown in this picture, the round-leafed and the spatulae, which will show you that little white flower is a flower of the sundew, and that's going in a log. here it's blown up a bit. The round leaf sundew on the left side here, you can see it's round, and there you see all these little projections or tentacles they call them, or little globules of mutagenic or mucilage sweet stuff on the edges, which attracts bugs. This is the spatulate on this side, and you can see that it's more oval. Okay. And this is a close-up, same plant. And again, the pretty flowers. They grow between 4 inches and 7 inches tall. And the bugs that land on there, they go after that mucilage. They think it's something that's good to eat. And unfortunately, once it touches it, that little tentacle comes down and covers the bug. And if the bug touches a second tentacle trying to get away, then that tentacle comes down. Eventually, it just gets smothered by motherly love. Like, come here, I want to hug you. Yeah, that I'm going to dissolve you in 15 minutes and take all your nitrogen, potassium away from you. There are some that are closed up in here, and these are probably have bugs in them. After it dissolves a bigger bug, then that little spatulate leaf will just kind of turn black. Okay.
How long does it take? A couple hours for that to, couple days?
It takes about 15 minutes to kill the bug, and they say that sometimes it does a little bit of sedative to it, so that it won't feel pain. But the bug will die because the breathing tubes get all clogged up, or it just gets tired and it just gives up. And then it'll dissolve it. It takes about 10 days to 2 weeks to take out just the nitrogen and the phosphate, what it needs to grow. Again, these plants are all photosynthesizing. So they don't need to eat the bug. They don't need the meat, but they need the minerals. And then they're making their own carbohydrates and get their own energy from its own sugars. But just because they're living in a bog with no nitrogen, they need to get it from the animals. Now, there are stories that these things will, the pitcher plants actually, will take in a salamander, and especially more down south, the spotted salamanders that go in there, and they get dissolved in about 2 days. And some of them don't manage to survive for a few days, and they swim around, but they have done that. Now, there's a lot of pitcher plants that grow in this country, and you can buy them, but most of them are from down south. And if you try to grow them up here outside, you're all going to die. The only pitcher plant that's native to this area is the northern pitcher plant. And that has to be kept outside all winter because it has to go through a cold period in order to bloom the next year. So you don't want to bring them inside. And this is a spatulate leaf sundew from our bog. Let's see. Any bugs here, Barb? Might be one over here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I grabbed a couple of these little spatulas and knocked all the mucilage off of it. And within a half an hour, the stuff appeared again. So it's very quick. And again, this is the flower. Any bugs? You see any bugs?
No.
The flowers are pretty. Now, there's a thread leaf sundew, which is native to this area too. I picked this one up also in the flower show in Hartford. And last year I put it in, and hopefully it's going to come back this year. And it's just a long thread, and it has those little tentacles on the ends of it. So it's a little bit different than the previous two. This is the lovely bog lady came to pay the bog the visit back a few years ago.
Oh, here's the rose begonia. This is one of our native orchids that grows in the bog. And it's maybe about a foot tall. It blooms on a very slender stalk. It has one leaf. Some of the orchids will have 2 flowers. Most have 1, but it's really quite lovely. It has a scent. They say kind of a raspberry scent. Here's a close up. Yeah, it'll bloom in maybe in June, early June. It'll start blooming.
If you go to Whittemore Sanctuary, walk up to we call the Bog Trail, left-hand side, bring binoculars. One year, we saw thousands of these blooming out.
You can see
out in the
pink.
bog, about 50 yards away in early June, just completely pink. It was a good year for them. You need binoculars. Fortunately, you can't get to them, otherwise people would have collected them all.
So there are about 44 native orchids that bloom in Connecticut, but many of them are in bogs. So you're not going to find them, or a little bit more difficult to find. This particular rose begonia has 2 flowers. And you can see, here's the pitcher plants, here's our orchids and the sedge grasses.
You think you're in the middle of a big bog, but that's my front yard.
And that's-
4 square feet.
And that's that little pot of water there.
A little picture cropping.
It's 4 feet in diameter.
of the plant, maybe.
Oh, the plant or the bog, the whole bog? Okay.
Yeah, 27 inches across, and you could figure out the area pi r squared, right?
Here's the
Knows all that stuff.
pitcher plant in the autumn, and there's cranberries growing. Oh, there's a couple cranberries right here. And here's the more of our large cranberries. They have tiny, tiny leaves.
There's 2 kind of cranberries, the large one, the vaccinium, microcarpa, and then the small, they call them the small cranberry, which are smaller. These are the ones you buy in the store. We have some of the little ones growing, but they're tiny. It's not worth it for those. You want to see the cranberry. You want to be able to do something with them.
Here's the close-up of the cranberry flowers. And they're really beautiful when you take a look at these flowers. And at one point, they used to be called craneberry because people thought they looked like the beak of a crane's, the bill of a, kind of like the geraniums, wild geraniums too. When they dry, kind of go to seed, they have that crane bill too. And this is what we got, 10 cranberries. That was the first year. And we floated it and harvested our 10 cranberries.
So
And-
she made a cranberry muffin with her 10 cranberries. It had a lot to be desired.
It was
But we did it.
from a mini muffin from our mini bog. Flanders has this great bog walk that we did. This was what year was
This
this?
is 2019.
This is still 2019. Oh yeah, it says that on the bottom, yeah. So that was a good year. We were able to do it because last year we did it a few years.
And Barbara's on the bog. It's a fen, but they have the bog flowers. You can see all of the pitcher plants
See
there.
the pitcher plants right there?
So-
And you will still see cranberries there, and it's really beautiful too. It was cold that day.
So in the year following that,
Okay, so this is
Go back.
2021. Go back. All right.
they couldn't hold a walk because it was too warm and they weren't able to get on the ice. But my bog froze over. So I invited them all over to my house to walk in my bog. But they declined. That's their loss. It only took one person at a time across it, though.
So this is now 2021, and you can see we have 2 flowers, 2 pitcher plant flowers. And you can see the plant is really doing well. And I'll look at the sphagnum moss kind of taking over. And here's the two pitcher plants. Here's the flower from the previous year, the dried flower. And see, these are all the buds for the orchids, these right here. And this is what we had, 24 flowers on 14 plants. And it's really lovely. And here's the pitcher plants here. And then all our orchids. And then you know what, this bog attracts dragonflies. Pete put a little stick there. You'll often see dragonflies love it too. They land on the stick all the time.
And the plant spreads by runners. It goes through the sphagnum moss. And I can't really thin out my sphagnum moss or cranberries because I'm afraid I'll get rid of the begonias.
So, so just another picture of the flower, the pitcher plant flower, and the orchids.
Just sphagnum moss in there in water.
So
There's just sphagnum moss in there.
It's sphagnum moss is there.
yeah, it's still there. Yeah,
Yes.
it's growing and dying and growing and dying.
But I mean, is there any other material in that? Is it a medium?
The soils and yeah.
Oh,
you read
just-
through that.
Just the original soil I put in there. That's
Nothing,
it.
no
Nothing-
fertilizer, nothing else.
Don't
It's
put
getting
any
it from the
fertilizer
bugs.
in.
It's
No
getting all.
fertilizer because it just collects in there. It doesn't need fertilizer. It needs to eat the bugs. That's
It
what
needs
fertilizer
it's getting its nitrogen from those bugs.
you have to add water.
Well, that flower cup there, the water goes down in the bottom. I'll put in maybe half a gallon. I have a dipstick, so when it starts coming down into the bog, I can an hour later determine how much water is in there, and I want to make sure that that it's about within 2 or 3 inches of the top of the cup, the flower pot, and you don't want to put too much water in. Everything's trial and error for us. You don't want to put too much in because it'll rot the roots out on like the pitcher plant. But whatever we're doing seems to be okay. So sometimes
It's
we let it
working.
go a day without any water, and it gets a little bit dried out. If it's not flowering season, and then I put the water in the following day. That way, it kind of keeps dried out, and the roots don't get waterlogged.
And if we're on vacation in the summer, we have to ask our fireman friend come over to water the bog. He comes over and he does that every year for us.
Typical macho fireman.
Yeah, and he goes, "Oh, what do you?"
Water.
He's watering our bog.
You can see how the sphagnum moss is. You can't see the rim of
Oh, it's beautiful.
the container anymore. You see that?
It's hidden.
Because now the sphagnum moss is going over the container into the garden, and so are some of the cranberries. So it's expanding, and so I'm watering the whole yard now because
Here's those cranberries though, right down here. So you can see these are all blooming at around the same time. This is another flower, marsh St. John's wort. Now, usually when you think of St. John's wort, you think of yellow flowers. This one's like a beautiful pink salmon color. And look at the around the leaves. They have that beautiful magenta color.
So is that a native or just a bog type thing?
It is a native flower, and it does wants to have wet feet. So it'll be grown in bogs.
Whittemore has them. You see them in many swampy areas, wet areas.
See, it's beautiful pink color. And we were lucky to get this bumblebee. And note the pollen sacs right here is the color of the flower. Pretty of the time these bloom. Now we went over to Whittemore. We knew, they were there. So we go in the morning. Most like native flowers are blooming around 10 o'clock. Nice day, sunny, 10 o'clock in the morning, they're blooming. Well, not this one. This one will open up around 2 o'clock in the afternoon or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So if you want to see this, you got to go a little later.
You get up there at 10 in the morning and sit there and watch it.
You can, yeah. And look for birds and the bog, yeah. And this is the seed pods.
So we have a lot of this going on. It actually just started going outside the bog because there's so many seeds that are being shed by it.
The broadleaf arrowhead, we had that in the beginning, the first couple of years. That plant though wants to be it'll take over. It'll be about 3 feet in height. So it's just not really good for a mini bog. And we had the monkey flower too. just 1 year.
Hmm.
And then that was it. But if you want to see that broadleaf arrowhead, white memorial on your boardwalk there, you'll see the flowers over there. The
The
boardwalk, I've seen them over by the boardwalk.
Maybe.
I don't know.
We haven't really searched there too much.
Yeah.
There's a lot of them on the boardwalk.
And here's the bog yellow-eyed grass, which gets a little flower. And that one you have to try and take a picture of. That thing is a little difficult, but and that blooms early in the morning. And the water horehound, it's kind of spreading too in the bog, our bog. It has the little flowers on the axils of the leaves. It's in the mint family.
Well, I thought that would be a better picture. It blooms quite profusely, and it's nice to see a bouquet of yellow flowers. So when you get up, instead of 10 o'clock, make it about 8 o'clock, and you spend the whole day watching this one, and then the pink one's blooming, and then the other stuff like these guys will come along. And we have visitors. We've had green frogs that live in there. I'll be watering it, and then something jumps out of the pot. That kind of scares me. And then it comes back in. We've had the eastern black swallowtail eating probably some of the dill that we planted near the bog, but it went into the bog and it was crawling around in there. And we've had a garter snake that passed through one day. And one day I was taking a picture of a bumblebee pollinating the cranberry plants, and I was trying to get the right picture. All of a sudden, he was gone, and something was rustling around in the bog, and there was a toad. The toad ate a bumblebee. I didn't think they went after bumblebees, but he ate them, and I felt bad because I was trying to move the bee closer to myself, and the toad got her. But there's things that grow in there. And this is our bog in 2021. It's in the left-hand corner.
It's
there.
right.
See?
Let's see,
That's
it's
when
right
it was.
here.
That was only 2 years old. So we have some other flowers in the back. You take a look at that, and then later on you see how much the sphagnum moss has taken over. Now, Barbara says I'm out in the bog too much every day. I go out there. You say she's going to push me in one day. She's getting mad at me because that's all I do, watching the flowers.
Yeah, we need a
bloom.
little bigger bog.
And she said, you go out there, you get a good tan, and then when they find you 10,000 years from now, then they could put you on display in Peabody Museum. That's a true bog man that they found in Ireland. So we, the following year, what year was this? Well, we decided we're going to harvest our cranberries and do a pick your own cranberries. Containers provided.
Yeah, so he puts it on Facebook, this little sign, and then people were thinking we have this big bog. And it's like, we don't have a big bog, but can we, pick the cranberries? I'm like, I don't think so.
Can make one muffin.
Yeah, they can make.
So in 2023,
Look at, we have more.
144 cranberries. And of course, no more muffins.
Now we graduated.
Well, we floated them
floated
like they
them.
do out in the bogs in Massachusetts, and we
He
diced. They're
diced.
beautiful inside.
And look at, now we graduated from a muffin to a bread.
Did you take any of those seeds or you're not? From when you open?
No, we don't need to do that. They just,
I don't want any more cranberries.
they're just taking over.
They'll take over.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was very good. It was good. Okay, so this is late November 2023.
Everyone asks, well, what do I do in the winter with my bog? Nothing. I might put some leaves around it. I try not to put too many oak leaves because it's too much tannin in there. But you cannot see where the container edges anymore. I have some bricks on the side there. And the pitcher plants are doing well. Everything is doing well. The sphagnum moss stays fairly green. And then wait to the spring to come.
Okay, now we're in 2024 and pitcher plants look great again. Sphagnum moss looks good again.
Now, the picture itself will last about 2 years and then it dies and a new picture comes out, but the whole plant itself can live 50 years. And you might spend $25 for a good sized pitcher plant, but it's worth it because that could live for
It could
years and
live.
years and years. And they give you flowers every year. It's not like buying marigolds every year and have to replant them.
So now Pete bought this one. You bought it online, right?
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like the other, it's like the rose begonia, only it's like looks up, it looks like it's upside down. And we had one of these, one orchid blooming.
And Whittemore is loaded with these too. So if you go in June, you'll see the grass pink and you'll see the rose begonias. Now, I had to make another bog in 2023 because my sundews were getting crowded out by the sphagnum moss. And I think I lost them. So because of the sphagnum moss, I didn't want to pull that sphagnum moss out because I'd lose the begonias. So I made another bog.
So he made a new one, again, small.
How deep is your?
The container?
7 inches. It's not much. So I put in bones of a deer vertebrae to make it look better, but then the mice grabbed it and ran away with that. And I'll go back one. One problem I had, see that square? I put a sundew
Oh,
in
yeah.
there, and
Wait a minute,
the
I can
stupid
get it.
crows came over in the
What'd I
spring, and they yanked the cups out of the ground. We were away, yanked the cups out of the ground, we yanked the plants out of the cups, and even we had planted some portulaca up above. They pulled everything out.
They're pulling it out, but they're looking for bugs, I guess, underneath these plants. They know it was maybe, just recently disturbed, so they're pulling plants out.
So what I did was put sticks all over it so that they keep those crows away from it because some of these plants are $10, $15, $20 and I don't want to be having the crows killing them. My next thing I want to grow is it's another orchid, nodding ladies tresses. This is taken at Earth Tones. I have to order one and they're little orchids, the tiny little ones, and they're face downward and they spiral up the central the stem. And it's like a spiral staircase. And they bloom in the fall.
They
So
bloom
these
later.
are later blooming ones. They only grow about 6 to 8 inches tall. And orange fringe orchid, I would love to do that one. It's $40. And I want to make sure that bog grows and gets filled in first before I spend the money on that. But that's a pretty one. This is my friend Bob's Big Bog. It's bigger than mine, but he had some trouble with it and animals digging stuff out. And he didn't I told him what to plant, he didn't. So unfortunately, Bob's Big Bob isn't doing as well.
So it looks like you use one of those pond liners perhaps?
No, that's the hard one again. You can use pond liners, flexible stuff. This is just
The tub.
it's hard to find some of the round ones anymore. And you go to a place in line, it's hard. And yeah, if you don't want them too deep. But he liked that's a good idea, having it shaped like that. You could put more dirt on one end, make a little hill there where you could put your pitcher plants. These are taken at Earth Tones. If you want to look at bogs close up, big ones, go over there. You don't have to buy anything, but just go and appreciate what he did. This is a 4-foot bog. Now, keep in mind that you need to put water in there, and it does evaporate in the summer. So the bigger the bog, the more water you can use. It'd be a little more expensive. And this is a 6-foot bog with the works. You got the 12-foot hot dog with the works. Well, this is a 6-footer with the works. It's beautiful. There's all pitcher plants in there, and sundews and cranberries.
Yeah,
And
everything's in.
he's got about 10 up there
There's
on
these
different
are
sizes.
different sizes, smaller ones, all sizes.
Where's that?
That's Earth Tones and Woodbury.
Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful place for native plants and flowers. No pressure to buy anything. Just walk around and enjoy it. So these are bog bowls. You can buy one of these for anywhere from $25 to $250 or make your own. He's using a kind of a plastic container, and you need to put these in the ground over winter. I don't recommend getting one of these because they may crack in the soil. So get those polypropylenes, find one, spend the money on that. Don't get regular hard plastic because you'll cry.
See, do the center for the water.
These, no, you don't have to because it's so small that you just fill it up. If you see the
It's
water
small,
coming up
yeah.
too high, just stop.
What are they
Again,
about?
there's no hole in the bottom because you want the water to
About
stay in.
14 inches in diameter.
Yeah.
So they're
It's
small. Oh, Pete,
Ah,
oh, you goofed it up.
that's my mini bar. Oh, no.
This is pickles. He's making
I'm
pickles.
getting old, and it looked like my pictures. And again, I don't see that well, so it looked like a bog. And it's my little pickles. Ah, dear. This is earth
Earth
tones,
tones again.
and that stork back there. That's not real, but if you guys can make bog, there's a couple of storks out there in the front. You could just take one of them and put them in. Matter of fact, I'm gonna go get that one on the way home.
And this is 2024, so I'm picking cranberries. 500. He's counting them. Not me.
Get a linear relationship.
And now look at where we are. We graduated again, and from a muffin to one bread. Now we're on two breads.
We're gonna sell breads pretty soon.
We're gonna have a farm stand.
Now, was that the original plants that have receded?
Yep,
Yep,
yeah.
yep.
Same
That's
ones.
the original. We didn't add any new ones, nothing.
Keep in
Yeah.
mind, the sphagnum will grow, and it'll take over, and so will the cranberries. So
Yeah, cranberries are very happy in your bog.
some people don't like them because you can't put sundews in there because they're small. They're gonna get covered up, So it's what you want.
The bread tastes better than the muffin.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
It was good. We gave some to our fireman friend because he waters the bog. This is the Black Spruce Bog at Mohawk Mountain. That's the trailhead. And we led a hike there for White Memorial a few years ago with Kyle from Earth Tones. And if you're going to go there,
Next one. Okay.
this is the trail map for it. You drive up to the top almost, and there's a building up there parked there across the street. And the bog is only about 500 feet long. But there's a viewing area for handicap, but we went there and you can't see anything. So if you're going to go on a bog, don't go off the edge. That stick is 4
That's how
feet long.
deep it is, that bog.
And remember, the bog is floating on top of water because there's layers of sphagnum moss, dead sphagnum moss, and then water, and then down below it's more peat.
Mm.
And if you slip off the edge in certain areas, you might go up to your waist there. And there's other plants that grow there. We mentioned the sphagnum, gold thread, wild calla, and the sunders. And the trees are starting to grow in there because there's enough. It's not really soil, but the trees can grow in that peat moss.
Mm-hmm.
And we get the big black spruce, we got his name, and then the tamarack, which is a Native American larch. The European larch is the one you usually see around here, but that's a European one. And then there is also the mountain holly, the leatherleaf, and sheep laurel. And then, so that's it. So if you're interested in growing your own, I have information there. And the same as what's up here. And you can start off with a small bog. Don't get a real big one like my friend Bob did. And get a smaller one.
Yeah.
And get your soil and everything. It takes a few days to get everything wet enough and packed in there. Get a couple plants, plant them in there. Don't get too much sphagnum moss in the beginning, and then see what you do. It's trial and error. And then if you like it, you can add more stuff to it. But and then if you want, like Kyle wants to make a whole bog in my front yard. I said, no way, Kyle. Then you get schemes. So this is Arlo and Janice, and she's concerned about her bog because of climate change. And those carnivorous plants are getting very hungry, and he has to whack them back every once in a while. And Barbara loves to draw and paint, so she's done this one here. Thank you.